Hey everybody, and welcome back to History Student Reacts. Today we'll be watching the First Punic War Part 1 by Oversimplified. Stay tuned for Part 2, it will be coming soon. So we're getting into some Roman history, some Republican history at that. I'm pretty excited to jump into this one. It will be our first Oversimplified reaction. This is one of the more famous conflicts of the ancient world. I'm excited to watch this, learn a little bit, hopefully explain some of the stuff that he will be talking about. If you guys end up enjoying this video, I'd appreciate it if you would check out my Patreon, which is linked down below. And without any further ado, let's jump into this reaction.
This video was made possible by NordVPN. Click the link below and get an exclusive deal with a huge discount and a 30-day money-back guarantee.
Nice.
Introducing our new, glorious, breathtaking bucket plushie. Limited quantity, available now. Along with some Punic War character pins. Buy them, or I'll marry your mother.
Oh, wow.
It's your choice.
Marcellus, you sure have a lot of dignity. Kiss me.
Okay. Hey, Dad? Hi, son. Just reading the newspaper. What can I do for you? Well, you know how you always say Rome is the greatest civilization in the world? It bloody well is. Well, I was just wondering, what makes us so great? How did we come to be? Wow. My son. Boy, let me take you on a journey. To this side of the room.
Here we are in ancient Rome, in the Republic, I see. If you see that banner, that red banner on the wall at the rightmost side, SPQR. That's a very famous, saying that many of you might have heard. Senatus Populus K Romanus basically means the Roman Senate and people. This is one of the things that is associated very much with the Roman Republic, the Republican era, before, Rome became an empire run by dynasties. The two things that most characterize the Republic: the people, the citizens of Rome, and the Senate. So, if you didn't know, that's what that means.
The story of Rome begins with these beautiful baby boys going to town on some she-wolf mommy milkers. That's gross. You're gross!
Romulus and Remus, who were, said to have been raised by a wolf, would grow up and found Rome. One of them in particular, which I'm sure we'll get to. Keep in mind that this really early Roman history is mostly or entirely fictional. It's the mythical founding of Rome. There's not too much accurate history here. It's mostly mythological. But, these are the stories that the Roman people told themselves. So, that in itself is interesting.
Sorry, son. You're not gross. I love you. They're called Romulus and Remus. And when they grew up, in 753 BC, they founded Rome. But there was just one problem. They couldn't agree on which of them should be the king. But they worked it out peacefully, right? Oh, heavens no.
Nope.
Romulus caved Remus's skull in with a shovel. Here's a picture. Our first king committed fratricide? I know. Look at his face. When's the part where we become the greatest civilization, Dad?
Yes, murders his brother, and then the city is named directly after him. Romulus was certainly an enterprising fellow, I suppose you could say.
Well, you see, at first Rome was full of men. I'm talking like a real sausage party. You know what I mean? Yes, sir. So we invited some neighboring cities over for a big feast. And then we literally kidnapped all of their women.
Yeah, so this is the kidnapping of the Sabine women. He basically told it right there in a oversimplified way, as the channel's name suggests. He mentioned how Rome was a big sausage party at first. Not only was it a group of guys, this is some pretty unscrupulous fellows. The first Romans were kind of a collection of bandits, to be honest. And so, they basically went to a neighboring people, the Sabines, kidnapped their women, raped them, and married them. And that's how Rome got a female population. Not super great. This was, like I said, this was not a super great band of fellows who founded the city.
Here's a picture. Look at that one. She's like, this is messed up. You're messed up. Ugh. Sorry. I'll be a better father. I promise. So then, finally, after centuries of monarchy, those tyrannical kings started.
It is kind of funny, by the way, that, like I said, this is mostly mythological. this is not necessarily real history, and yet this is the story that the Romans decided to tell themselves. It's not a flattering picture, but I suppose it does show their power and their warmongering spirit, which they always held on to. But it is interesting that even in their own mythology, their city starts with sort of a series of atrocities, murdering your brother, kidnapping and raping a bunch of women. Not great stuff here.
Started getting a little too big for their britches, so we overthrew the kings and established Rome as a republic. Is that when all the killing stopped? Oh, heavens no. That's when the killing surged, baby. We went wild and conquered the Latin League, the Samnites, the Etruscans. Woo! What a rush. Dad, Rome seems pretty barbaric. You're barbaric! Oh, I forgot to tell you about the time a prophet told Saturn his son would one day overthrow him. So Saturn literally ate his own son seconds after he was born. I don't want to see a picture. Here's a picture.
I knew he was going to bring that up. That is a painting by Francisco Goya, a modern painter, I believe in the early 1800s from Spain, and he painted a lot of rather dark images. I'm a fan of him. He was a pretty sad fellow, a pretty dark individual, and this is one of his more famous paintings. And it depicts the scene very well, and it depicts it in all of its horror, how grotesque it was, I think.
Dad, look at that! That's messed up, man. Are we really this uncivilized? Hey! If we were so uncivilized, would we use communal toilets where we all fart and poo together in one big stinky, steamy, dirty toilet room? Yeah, Dad, we would. Clean your butt with a sponge, Timulus. But all these guys just used it. What's wrong with your son, bro? I don't want to be Roman. This is so weird. You're weird! Sorry, you're not weird. I'm sure you're probably fine.
Ooh. Rough. Okay, so we got a bit of a background on Rome, and as the son character keeps pointing out, wow, Dad, this seems pretty barbaric. There's a famous quote, I believe it was from a chieftain who was an enemy of Rome. I don't really remember the context, but the quote, I'm paraphrasing, this is not literal, but it went something along the lines of, Rome makes a desert and calls it peace. Rome was pretty destructive, yet they felt they were the most civilized nation. And I mean, they had complex systems of law, of, governance, it was a very complex society, but in many ways, as we can see from this perspective here, it was pretty barbaric.
The Roman Republic, a nation that, since its foundation, had been stabbing necks all the way down the Italian peninsula. But this isn't the famous Roman Empire that ruled the known world. Not yet anyway. This is a relatively juvenile Rome, still just a regional power. In 264 BC, the big daddy of the Western Mediterranean was Carthage. Let's rewind a bit. Carthage was founded in 814 BC, when some Phoenicians in Tyre had a mega surplus of goods and decided to export those goods across the Mediterranean. They became the dominant trading power in the region, and to support their growing trade network, the Phoenicians established a number of colonies, one of which was Carthage. Therefore, Carthage began its life as a Phoenician trade colony, and the Carthaginians were actually Phoenicians. Or, if you're a Latin-speaking Roman, they were Punic, hence the name of the video. Over the centuries, Carthage gradually expanded and became the region's base of power. Just like Rome, Carthage was a semi-democratic republic with its own senate and judiciary. But there were also some pretty
today, we really don't remember Carthage that much. I mean, if you think about, say, your education in history or popular history or history in media, everybody knows about the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire, even if they know virtually nothing about it. If you go to the common person and ask them about Carthage, they'll probably say, what is that? I've never heard of it. So from that, you can probably judge how, the relationship is going to go. I mean, there are several Punic wars. You can probably assume who's going to come out on top in the end. And of course, we know that Rome will continue to expand and be the hegemon of that region. But as we can see, at the time, Carthage was a major competitor and at one point more powerful than Rome was. when Rome was still a young republic who was certainly the dominant power on the Italian peninsula, but not much past that.
Hefty differences between the two. While Rome was big into farming and stabbing people in the neck, the Carthaginians, on the other hand, just like their Phoenician forefathers, had built their power through trade and navigating the waves. They went...
Yeah, I mean, the sort of ideal of the Roman citizen was the farmer soldier. You know, he would go off to fight, conquer, expand the republic, then he would retire to his plot of land, farm, raise a family. Carthage, on the other hand, was big into trade, which makes sense. They were a Phoenician trading colony, as Oversimplified mentioned, and like a lot of Mediterranean powers, you know, particularly Eastern Mediterranean powers like the Phoenicians or other peoples, they were traders, you know. I mean, this was a populated area. There were a lot of different societies. There were a lot of goods to trade, and so that's how they made their wealth.
And here, and there, selling ivory tusks, gold, and slaves. And as a result, they were rolling in it. Whenever they weren't busy swimming around in their copious hoards of money, in their spare time, they also possibly enjoyed sacrificing their children to Baal, the god of...
Wow.
Let me just check my notes. Ah, yes. Plant fertility. Oh boy, these figs aren't looking too hot. Maybe if I throw my son into a burning pit of fire, they'll grow. Have you tried watering them, Dad? No, we'll try that second. As a result of all that trading, Carthage had emerged as one of the Mediterranean superpowers. But wait, they said. Rome? What the heck is that? Well, I know it's a pretty obscure little country that you've probably never heard of. But this spunky young nation was about to upset the entire region's balance of power. Initially, the two sides enjoyed relatively friendly relations, and it even signed a couple treaties. But it was a relationship that was practically destined to turn sour. See, Rome had a thing where they liked to aggressively expand their boundaries, often viewing such expansion as a defensive act. Kinda like when you kill your neighbor, because you knew eventually they would have tried to kill you first.
Honestly, this is a pretty good description of the Roman Republic. And later in the Roman Empire, they were extremely expansionist. And they would expand until they couldn't. At a certain point, the empire would stagnate. And, you know, they would start to decline, actually. They couldn't expand any further. But until they literally could not, Rome would keep expanding. And they did love to frame it defensively. You know, whenever Rome would expand into someone else's territory, you know, fight them, take over, conquer them, they'd always like to frame it as, well, they were a threat, or they were going to attack us, or they did attack us. You know, Rome also likes to make up false reasons to go invade their neighbors. So they did have this sort of defensive framing in which they felt like their expansion and their conquest of other territories was justified for one reason or another, even though if you sort of pull all of that back, their justification, their legal, moral justification, you know, they were really just an expanding empire, even during the time of the Republic.
Meanwhile, Carthage was extremely protective of its wealthy trade network. So if you put a very strategically important island between them, well, 2 + 2 = war. Tensions rose, and the two sides began viewing each other with increasing disdain. The hard-working Romans looked across the water at the money-hungry Carthaginians and said, "Look at those dishonest crooks. Bet they've never done an honest day's work in their lives." And the Carthaginians looked back and said, "Look at those simple-minded brutes. Bet they've never sacrificed a baby in their lives." Yeah. While war between the two superpowers seemed inevitable, the event that finally triggered it was a little unexpected. The whole thing began with a few simple mad lads on a wild night out. These mad lads are called the Mamertines. They were Italian mercenaries employed by the tyrant of Syracuse here. But when he died, his successor said, "Sorry, fellas, we don't need any big burly men with sharp sticks anymore. You can all go home." The Mamertines, as it turned out, didn't want to go home. So instead, they went to the nearby town of Messana and said, "Hey man, we are but poor little buff boys without a home. May we come in?" Aw, poor fellas. Sure thing. Just so long as you promise not to massacre all of us. We promise.
A bunch of unemployed mercenaries looking for something to do. This is certainly not a recipe for disaster, is it?
The Mamertines then massacred all of them. Well, not all of them, just the men. And they stole their homes and families. Ha! This is my house now. This is my best dad ever mug now. And you guys are my new family. Son, wanna go play catch with your old papa? You're not my real dad! Ugh, teenagers. Am I right, dear? You're not my real husband! Ugh, I'm so trapped in this marriage. Then get out! No, Messana was now controlled by the Mamertines, and they began raiding up and down the Syracuse coastline. When the new ruler of Syracuse saw this, he wasn't happy. The Syracusans began fighting back, and in response, the Mamertines said, "Oh crap, they're fighting back? What do we do? Quick, we'll convince the Carthaginians to come and save us." No! We're in trouble, and we need a big, strong empire to come and rub our bellies. Why are you saying it like that? If I was a big, strong empire, I think I'd like to be seduced. See? It's working! The Carthaginians had long dreamed of controlling all of Sicily. They had been fighting Syracuse and their Greek influence on the island for centuries. And now, here was a great opportunity to get one over on them. So
It's interesting. We sort of see Sicily as an integral part of Italy at this point in history. And of course, there's no like Italian state apart from the Romans at this point. But, the region had been settled by Greeks. And now, of course, there's conflicts between the Carthaginians, who were a Phoenician colony, and Greeks over Sicily. The Romans aren't even on Sicily yet, though, of course, they will be. We'll get there.
Carthage promptly answered the Mamertines' cry for help and sent a force to garrison Messana. As it turned out, however, some within the ranks of the Mamertines weren't too happy with the occupying Carthaginians, and they sent out a second cry for help to Rome. When it reached the Roman Senate, they were a little more hesitant. Going to help the Mamertines ran the risk of triggering an all-out war with Carthage, and they had only just finished conquering the Italian peninsula, so they were kind of tired. Plus, the Mamertines were all the way across the water. They had never made a leap like that before. So you would assume that to avoid any conflict with Carthage, the exhausted Romans would probably sit this one out. But you would assume wrong. Rome just couldn't resist a good chance for war. Why? Well, there's something you gotta understand about Rome. See, as a republic, they were hell-bent on preventing any one man from ever gaining too much power. And so rather than having one leader, Rome had two, called consuls.
A very unique system where you have two different executives. This is very rare, I think, throughout history. I mean, there are other examples of having multiple executives at once. But, if we look at both monarchical and, say, democratic systems, whether you have, a king or a president, there's usually one, or at least there's not two side by side. Some countries have a president and a prime minister, but they serve different functions. In this case, you have two consuls. They, have the same job, the same role, and they sort of work together to get stuff done. I suppose it is a good way to prevent, one singular man from ruling, but it can cause a lot of problems, particularly if your two consuls don't like each other, or say their agendas are different. I'm sure you can see how that would cause a lot of issues.
Who shared power. These consuls could also only serve for 1 year at a time before new consuls were elected. These measures to limit the powers of the consuls were noble, but had an interesting side effect. The consuls knew they had just 1 year to try and gain as much glory and prestige as possible, something that was very important in Roman society. And the best way of gaining glory and prestige? Military victory, of course. The Roman political system basically ended up encouraging these consuls to go out and be as aggressive as your Italian grandmother when you don't eat all the spaghetti. And
this is very true, and he had it up on screen a second ago about how, politics and military life were intertwined. That is, very much true for Rome. You see, having a successful military career would make you very popular, and you'd head back to Rome and be a successful politician. If you had risen through civil politics to become a successful politician, you would want to go serve in the military to gain that military honor. If you didn't, if you never been a military man, you just been a politician your whole life, you probably wouldn't get the same level of respect that a successful general would get. And so you see a lot of Roman politicians who have risen through civil politics, or rich Romans, say someone like Crassus, who have risen through their wealth, will often try to go for military glory at any cost, because they want to have dignitas, they want to gain that honor, they want to be more than just a politician, they want to be a successful general, they want to bring glory to the Republic and to themselves. And this can often cause a lot of problems if you have these guys who are so desperate to gain honor, they end up making a lot of mistakes, or a lot of hasty decisions, you could say.
So the glory-seeking consuls convinced the people to vote in favor of going to Messana. And in they went. Upon the arrival...
And not to mention, the Roman people, they're not against conquest either. Conquest brings in money for the state, and that means lower taxes for the people. It also, if you're a patriotic Roman, you want to see the empire or the Republic expand. You want to bring honor to the Republic, so... a lot of the time, most of the time, the people are also very much in favor of warfare.
Of the Romans, the Carthaginians in the city, amongst the confusion, were forced to leave. Now, in contrast to Roman aggression, the Carthaginian military had a slightly different philosophy. All right, kids, listen up. If you want to grow up to be Carthaginian military leaders, there's a few things you have to understand. If you fail to succeed on the battlefield, that's a crucifixion. Showing cowardice, that's a crucifixion. Hello, sir. What are you doing here? Aren't you meant to be in Messana? Yeah, but the Romans showed up. So you just left? Sure did. Oh, you better believe that's a crucifixion. The Roman consuls were awarded for victory, and therefore tended to be aggressive go-getters. By contrast, the Carthaginian generals were brutally punished for failure, and so they tended to be more cautious and restrained.
This is a good look in the difference between awarding good behavior and punishing bad behavior. As you can see, one of those things will make you more aggressive, more enthusiastic. If you're rewarded for your good behavior, you're going to be someone who takes the initiative and runs with it. If you punish for bad behavior, that's probably going to cause a lot more caution. People are going to be a lot more careful. They might not go for that big opportunity because there's a chance they could fail. This is obviously not just true for, military matters. This is true in a lot of aspects of life.
This dynamic is helpful for understanding some of the crazy things that happened during the Punic Wars. So, the Romans have crossed over to Messana, and now there was some red on the island. Hit that panic button. This turn of events was unacceptable to both Carthage and Syracuse, so the traditional enemies teamed up to kick the Romans off their island. They surrounded the city and said, "Hey, you jerks! This isn't your island! Come out of there at once!"
Okay, we're coming.
See, Phil, you just gotta speak with authority. That's what being an alpha male's all about. Hey, man. Oh, you brought your weapons and armor? No, I didn't mean... Oh, crap. Out the Roman legions came to engage the Carthaginians in battle, and they sent them packing. With the Battle of Messana, whether intended or not, by going to help the Mamertines, the two sides had just slipped into an all-out war.
And you gotta understand, this is pretty damn cocky from Rome. Sure, they got an invitation from some of the Mamertines, but they really have no business being on this island. Not to mention, they've just put themselves into conflict with perhaps the biggest power of the Mediterranean, definitely the biggest power of the Western Mediterranean. Whereas they are, powerful and expanding, but still a relatively small republic, mostly contained to the Italian peninsula. This is extremely cocky behavior from Rome, but, this is how they always behaved.
With the initial Roman victory, towns across Sicily, including Syracuse, began switching allegiance, because being a winner is more fun. But the Carthaginians weren't about to just give up that easily. In 262 BC, they began building up their forces at Agrigentum. So the Romans, being aggressive go-getters, aggressively go-got them. The Romans immediately laid siege, hoping to starve out the Carthaginian garrison. However, because this was the first time Rome had been fighting outside the Italian peninsula, across the water, they struggled to supply their forces. And before long, the Romans were as starving as the Carthaginians they were besieging.
Yeah, and so this will be one of the characteristics of the Punic Wars, is the discrepancy in naval power between Carthage and Rome, because, we're fighting around the Mediterranean. Obviously, naval power is super important, and, of course, it doesn't really play much of a role here, but even you can see that the small amount of naval power required to keep their men supplied, the Romans already kind of lack, because they're used to land warfare. They're used to running supply lines on land. That's what they know. They really do not know much about creating, supplying, manning a navy, running supplies through the ocean. These are all things they're going to have to learn. And of course, Carthage, being a trading empire that spans the Mediterranean, this is something they know very well. They're very much focused on both militarily and on the civilian and trade side. They're very much focused on naval power.
They had to forage for food, leaving them open to ambush. And when Carthaginian reinforcements arrived, creating a double siege, things got really bad. Everybody starved each other for months until nobody could take it anymore. And they all finally came out for battle, which Rome won. Here's the report from the recent siege at Agrigentum, sir.
We killed 30,000 while only suffering 7,000 losses? That's amazing! We're the best! Yes, sir. Whoops, those are the wrong way around. What? We lost 30,000? We're the worst! But we won, right? Yes, sir. But we also got our asses kicked. Yes, sir. So are we the best or the worst? Yes, sir.
The Romans won at Agrigentum because they were aggressive go-getters, and they now began eyeing up the possibility of conquering the entire island. But they also suffered very heavy losses, and it was clear they couldn't sustain a campaign if they couldn't supply their troops. Here's the issue. Sicily was an island. Islands are surrounded by water.
Yep.
A strong navy would be vital for supplying troops.
I mean, he's saying exactly what I just said. I should just let him say it instead. And by the way, we just went over, we won the battle, but we lost a lot of troops. That's what we call a Pyrrhic victory. It's basically a victory that's so devastating for you, for the victor, that, it might as well have been a loss. A victory, but you lost a lot along the way. And that's a term that also came from a battle against the Romans. But that's what we call a Pyrrhic victory. But now back to naval power and naval warfare.
And winning the war. Here was Carthage's navy. And here was Rome's. I think you can see the problem.
Historians debate just how much naval experience Rome had at this point. Presumably, they must have had something to defend their shoreline. But whatever it was, it would have paled in comparison to the Carthaginian juggernaut.
Yeah, surely they had some naval experience, but, anyone with a brain can look at the map of Rome's territory and say, this seems to be a primarily land-based empire. I reckon they're probably better on ground than at sea, which was exactly correct.
And so Rome had to figure out exactly what to do about all this water.
Come on, men. We're not gonna let some pansy candy-ass water get in the way of our glorious victory against Carthage. Charge! Tell my kids I love them.
Oh.
We're gonna need a bigger boat. What's a boat? I don't know. If the Romans wanted to win this war and obtain Sicily, there was only one thing for them to do.
And as you can see, the gap between Sicily and the rest of the Italian peninsula is very, very small. We're dealing with a little bit of water here, and we're already running into issues.
I guess we're just gonna have to go ahead and build ourselves a war fleet, aren't we? From scratch? From scratch. But we don't even know how.
Never mind how to fight with one. Don't worry, Hank.
We're up to the challenge. Come on, guys.
Are we?
We're Romans, and Romans aren't afraid of anything.
And so, the Romans worked long and hard trying to figure out how on earth you actually build the latest style of warship.
I mean, look, Romans are known for their engineering and their construction, but they would struggle to build these ships, and while, I mean, they would build up their navy during the Punic Wars, we can fast forward to down the line, say even to the time of Caesar, and Romans, they still really haven't gotten the hang of having a powerful navy. So, yeah, they will struggle with that for hundreds of years to go.
In the end, they had a bit of luck on their side. A Carthaginian quinquereme ended up accidentally grounding on Italian soil. The Romans found it and copied the design. While the new fleet was being built, the Romans trained rowers on land. And would you believe it? The Romans put together a full fighting fleet of 120 warships in just 2 months.
Wow.
A staggering feat. Now, I know what you're thinking, but oversimplified. If the Romans can build a war fleet from scratch in 2 months, then why does it take you half a year to make a video? Well, my valued subscriber, I think you should shut up.
What the heck?
I think that's a fair comment. Oversimplified makes very high quality content, and we gotta give him the time he needs to make that content, so I don't want none of y'all bothering him for the next video. He takes his time, but it's absolutely worth it.
How on earth did the Romans learn how to build a war fleet? This shouldn't be happening.
From what I hear, they copied the design from us, sir.
Well, how on earth did they get the blueprint, Carl?
I don't know, sir. But I'll tell you what. If you're worried about people stealing your data,
Here we go.
and you want to protect yourself from outside threats,
Don't you dare.
then
That
you,
time.
my friend,
If you mention NordVPN, I'll scream.
should use NordVPN. Do you like corporations knowing everything about you and then selling your data to advertisers who convince you to buy things you don't need in an endless cycle over and over until you die? Me neither. And that's why I use NordVPN. NordVPN allows you to connect to super fast secure servers all around the world, encrypting your IP address to protect your online data from undesirable eyes.
Very
that
nice.
means you can look at all the squatty potties you want, and no one will know. With NordVPN, you can search for better online deals in other territories and unlock content not available in your country. NordVPN now comes with a threat protection function and much more. And if you don't like it, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go to nordvpn.com/oversimplified to get an exclusive deal with a huge discount. That's
There you go. Hey, go check out his link. Go show some support to Oversimplified for these fantastic videos. We want to make sure we support the original creators of all of these fantastic history videos that we watch. So go and check out his link.
nordvpn.com/oversimplified. And as always, you'll be supporting my channel. So thank you. Now, where were we? Oh yeah, the siege at Agrigentum, supply issues, and building a war fleet.
Yep.
So now the Romans have a navy.
Like I said, during this conflict, they would build up a navy, though they'd still struggle with naval power for hundreds of years. But even if you have a navy, do you know how to use it? That's sort of the next question.
And it's time to put it to the test. But how does one wage ancient naval warfare?
Yep.
Easy. All of the ships had giant bronze rams on the front, so all you had to do was outmaneuver the enemy and give him the jimmies. Easy as pie. And so the aggressive Romans set out for some good old-fashioned jimmy giving. The consul, Gnaeus Cornelius Scipio, set out for the town of Lipara.
A name we will hear again. Keep an eye on the Second Punic War for that.
Believing the garrison there wanted to join the Romans. As he entered the harbor, however, he found himself trapped by a Carthaginian fleet. And in the following skirmish, he was completely outmatched.
Yep.
The Romans may have had a brand new fleet, but when it came to engaging in actual combat, their inexperience showed. There was just something better about the Carthaginian ships. The Carthaginian rowers had nicer abs. The entire Carthaginian Empire had been built on expert seamanship. So, when it came to water, the Carthaginians were better, and the Romans were wetter.
Like I said, you can build yourself a new, shiny, impressive navy, but if you don't have the experience and you don't know how to use it, then you're not going to get anywhere. Think about it. You're going up against the Carthaginians. These are soldiers. These are men who have been raised on the water. They have been doing this since they were very young. This is their lifestyle. Of course, they're better trained, more experienced. They know how to put their navy to use. And the Romans don't, which is fair enough. This is their first time really giving it a go, but that's obviously going to be a problem in this war.
In their initial skirmish, the Romans were beaten so badly that the consul, Scipio, was given a nickname, Asina. And if you're wondering what that means, just drop the Ina. So what were the Romans to do? How could they possibly stand up to this Carthaginian superpower? Well, there's something you gotta understand about the Romans. Back when they found that Carthaginian ship and copied its design, that wasn't a one-off thing. Copying their enemies was as Roman as punishing murderers by sewing them into a leather pouch with a monkey, snake, and rooster, and then throwing them into a river, which is a thing
Brutal.
they did. Wait, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, copying their enemies. Many of the most famous Roman inventions were actually borrowed. Aqueducts, chariot racing, their gods. Even in warfare, the Romans would get pierced by a Sabine javelin, and they'd be like, wow. They'd get hacked to bits by an Iberian sword, and they'd be like, wow. And they'd copy the designs for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons that Rome became such a powerful empire. While they were expanding, what they made sure to do was learn from their opponents. They would adopt the culture, traditions, military tactics, whatever, of those who they came across in order to enrich their own society and find more success in the future. In addition, this philosophy also extended to how they treated a lot of conquered peoples. Now, like I said, Rome could be very brutal in conquest. We're talking, massacres, enslaving people, all that good stuff. But if you look at them overall, they did have a tradition of taking people who they had conquered, adopting some of their traditions, adopting some of what they did, and then bringing them into the Roman way of life. And this is one of the reasons why they were so successful as an expansionist empire. Now, as time goes on, sort of the Roman way of doing things becomes more and more entrenched. They certainly did a lot more learning early on, because they're still a young, growing power. When they were an empire, they did a lot more, using their own ways to get things done. But they would always try and adapt to the circumstances.
However, they wouldn't just copy it. They would advance it, finding ways to
Yep.
adapt it as perfectly as possible. And in the case of naval warfare, the Romans realized if they wanted to beat the Carthaginians at their own game, they would have to adapt. The Romans excelled at combat on land, not on water. But what if, they said, we could somehow turn a sea battle into a land battle? Sounds crazy, right? Well, they made a couple of tweaks to their warship, and look, here they come again. They must love getting their asses kicked. Sir? What's that toll thing sticking out of their ships?
They really are idiots. Look at that thing. That'll make them blow over. I mean, look at...
Bob! Bob! Get your camera out! Take a picture of it!
I mean, how stupid can you be? Let's just add a big wooden tower to our ship that'll weigh us down and blow us over in the wind. I mean, what does that thing even do?
Yeah, there you go. And that's I love the presentation from Oversimplified, but that's exactly what they did. And when you think about it, it is kind of a simple idea, but at the same time, it's brilliant. The Romans suck at naval warfare. They don't know the maneuvers, they don't know the tactics, or at least they don't know how to execute them as well as the Carthaginians. So they say, we have this fleet, what do we do with it? How do we effectively use it? We're great at fighting on land. We have well-trained, well-disciplined, experienced veterans. What do we do? Just add a boarding plank, Just make it so that we can board their ship, and then we can fight like we're on land. Bingo, there you go. It's pretty simple, but it's a great idea. You're taking a situation in which you are clearly at a disadvantage, and you're trying to play to your advantages. This is what the Romans always did. They adapted whatever situation they were facing, so it would play to whatever advantages they had. And so that's what they decided to do here. It's a great idea.
The Romans had built a big swinging spiked gangway called the corvus. So when the Carthaginian ships approached to ram them, the Romans would just slam them. The Carthaginians tried going around. No problem. The corvus could swivel. Try going behind. The Romans would huddle to the coastline. It was foolproof. Those big, sexy Carthaginian rowing muscles could flex all they want, but they were no match for the Roman mind. So ladies, you see, what really matters is what's on the inside. Please go out with me. And with that, the Romans, who had only just recently began dabbling in the art of naval combat, thanks to their ingenious corvus, had just managed to outclass the Mediterranean seafaring superpower. The Carthaginians
Impressive.
were stunned, and the general in charge of the defeated Carthaginian fleet, well, you better believe that's a crucifixion.
Yeah.
With their newfound control of the seas, the Romans could now more easily blockade coastal cities and supply their legions on land. Surely, the Romans were now free to unleash their aggression all over the island. Haha! Hey Carthaginians, what are you gonna do now that we're free to rampage across the island? We're gonna go inside these walls and close this gate. Oh, come on, guys. Stop messing around. Come out so we can kill you. No. Oh, come on. No.
Oh, no.
To counter the new Roman supremacy, the Carthaginians decided to engage in a defensive war of attrition, forcing the Romans to engage in siege. After lengthy siege, the war in Sicily became a long, hard, back-and-forth slug. One by one, cities slowly fell as the Romans gained ground. Occasionally, the Carthaginians countered and even pushed them back, only for the Romans to rebound again. And whenever a city did finally fall, the Romans could delight in slaughtering the entire population and selling any survivors into slavery, which was...
Like I said, you get your fair share of atrocities when it comes to the Romans. We gotta make sure we have our massacres, selling people into slavery. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of other powers at the time were doing the same thing, but it's just worth noting.
was pretty standard procedure at the time. In general, the campaign on land was progressing much slower than the Romans had hoped, and quite frankly, they were getting sick of it. So in 256 BC,
I mean, well, the Romans wanted glorious conquest. You go in, you fight a bunch of pitched battles with your enemy, you outsmart them, and you conquer their territory. They don't want some, extended series of sieges. That saps a lot of resources, is not nearly as glorious, it takes a long time, it's not really what you want.
they decided that something had to change. Hey everyone, my name's Marcus Attilius Regulus, and I'll be one of your consuls for this year. Look, as I'm sure you all know, Sicily's being a bit of a drag. Sure, I could go and spend my entire year as consul besieging one single city, but they'll never make a naked statue of me for that. So
True.
here's the new plan. I'm gonna skip Sicily entirely, take my army, and go right for the heart of Carthage itself.
Bold.
I'll slaughter the men in...
Very bold, but exactly what you'd expect from someone who has a year to prove themselves and earn glory from themselves in the Empire. Like he said, he doesn't want to waste his year besieging some random city in Sicily. Sure, that continues the plan and continues the process, but, you're not going to be remembered for that. If you go straight to the heartland of Carthage, and you win, you'll certainly be remembered for that.
Enslave all the women and children, and when I return, you'll all build 1,000 naked statues of me.
Wow, nice.
Marcus, that women and children stuff, that seems pretty evil and barbaric. No, Jim, it's perfectly normal in the ancient world. Sometimes we even chop their pets in half. Okay,
Wow.
guys, looks like the Romans are coming straight for us this time. And what will they do when they get here? They'll kill us all. They'll massacre each and every last one of us. They may even chop our pets in half. That's barbaric! No, Rob, it's actually pretty normal for the time. We'd do the same to them. Who'll protect us? Funny you should ask, Mary. That's kind of why I called this meeting. Who will protect us? Protect our families, our homes, our children. You guys? Ha! Don't make me laugh. Why, you're just a bunch of stupid and weak farmers. Simple-minded buffoons. Cowards. Fools. Rob here thinks enslaving women and children is barbaric.
Come on, Rob.
You're a snowflake, Rob. Yes, you are. The fact is, if the Romans manage to land on African soil, we're all gonna die.
Very
A
inspiring.
terrifying, hideous, unspeakably painful death. Is that the end of that speech? Yes.
I could use a little bit on the motivation side of the speech, but the correct amount of fear-mongering, I would say, you should be afraid.
The Carthaginians had to stop the Romans from ever landing in Africa because they believed that would be the end. So as the Romans were building an invasion fleet, the size of which the world had never seen before, the Carthaginians were preparing an even bigger one to stop them. And in 256 BC, as the Roman invasion fleet made its way south, the stage was set for a humongous battle that saw 680 warships, around 300,000 men, fighting to decide the course.
And I think the number of men really gives you an idea of how massive this battle was. You know, I'm not a military historian, nor am I that familiar with, say, naval warfare. But just looking at those numbers, we have 150,000 men versus 140,000. We're talking an almost 300,000 man battle. You know, this is a battle of epic proportions, particularly considering the time period. This is an insane amount of manpower. I mean, clearly, both the Romans and the Carthaginians, you know, they're putting everything on the plate. The Romans, they really want to conquer Carthage. And Carthage, unsurprisingly, really wants to defend itself from the pillaging it's going to get if Roman soldiers make it to their shores.
Course of the war. To this day, the Battle of Cape Ecnomus remains possibly the largest naval battle in human history.
He says potentially because there's always debate over these kind of things. It sort of depends on the metrics you use, how you want to judge it. But yes, this is potentially the largest naval battle in human history. That is the scale we are talking about here. And this battle was thousands of years ago. It's just insane to imagine the amount of resources that had to be marshaled for this. Think of the level of technology in this era. Everything's analog. We're talking people are lifting things, using pulleys. Think about all the resources that had to be gathered, the ships that had to be built, the men that had to be conscripted, running all of these ships. I mean, it's really an incredible scale when you think about it.
All the way back in ancient times. So the next time your granddad tells you about the time he sank a Japanese aircraft carrier, kick him in the nuts. The Romans had a lot riding on this battle. They weren't just sending their warships, but transports as well, full of supplies and horses for their invasion of Africa. They therefore formed a protective wedge-like formation to punch through the long, thin Carthaginian line. The Carthaginian generals, however, desperate to prevent the Romans from reaching Africa, had a plan of their own. As the Roman fleet approached, the Carthaginian center feigned a retreat.
It's kind of interesting how we can see some of the same tactics that play out on land being used right now at sea. The Romans are going for a V formation, they're striking, and the Carthaginians are doing a feigned retreat. They're backing up and waiting to close in around the Romans. This is something you see in land battles pretty frequently, and here we're seeing it in a naval battle. It's pretty fascinating.
Luring the Romans in so their outstretched flanks could envelop them and get around the Roman corvus. A clever plan. But with such a huge battle and so many ships crowded together, the Carthaginians struggled to maneuver as hoped. And in the...
Yeah, I mean, it's hard enough to organize a land battle, particularly one of that proportion. But if you're talking about a naval battle, think about how difficult communication is going to be with that many ships. You're talking hundreds of ships across a very wide area. It is really difficult to get orders from one ship to another, and for everybody to make sure that, we're all going in the right direction, we're not hitting each other, nothing's going wrong. This would just be extremely tough to organize.
the chaos, 3 separate battles emerged across the huge battle space. With the number of ships limiting their ability to maneuver, the Carthaginians became sitting ducks, and all the Romans had to do was start swinging. The Roman center came out on top, and were then able to turn around and rescue their pinned down flanks. The Battle of Cape Ecnomus was a Roman victory.
Damn. And these are some pretty massive casualties, particularly for the Carthaginians, of course. We're talking 10,000 killed for the Romans, 30 to 40,000 for the Carthaginians. Not to mention, the Romans only lost 24 ships. That is very impressive for a battle of this scale. On the other hand, the Carthaginians have lost almost a third of their fleet, 94, 30 of those sunk and 64 captured. So that's a pretty, harsh blow to them. That's a pretty devastating loss. Well, there we go. It was ending right there. All right, this was an exciting one. I enjoyed this. Like I said, stay tuned for part 2. It will be coming soon. It's fun that we're getting a video on the First Punic War. I wonder if Oversimplified is going to do the Second Punic War after this one. That would be pretty cool. Obviously, the Second Punic War is far more well-known, I think. But yeah, this was a good video. I always like to get an opportunity to learn and talk about Rome, and also about Carthage. Like I said, I think they're kind of underrated. We don't remember them, but that's because they fell at the feet of the expanding Roman Empire eventually. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this one, I'd appreciate it if you would leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and check out my Patreon, which is linked down below. I hope you guys are all having a good day today, and I will see you all again next time. Goodbye.